Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, I'm looking ahead at the listener questions for this episode and realizing this episode's going to air in about 2 days, which is plenty of time for us to already be wrong about some of these questions in here, which is great. We love to be wrong, not that we're ever wrong, but hypothetically, if we were at some point in the distant future to be wrong, we love that. So, well, on with the show. Tony, I'll let you take this first one from @Omar_Austin8, valued Buckeye Huddle member. Tony, does LJ flip Dominick McKinley? 5-star defensive tackle.
5-star defensive tackle out of Louisiana. Did not sign on signing day. Dominick McKinley, the number 6 defensive lineman in the class, according to the 24/7 composite. There are obviously some conversations going on, and I think we talked about that on signing day. Mark Givler talked about that as well. But it has been, Tom, 21 years or so, 20 years or so since Ohio State signed a defensive lineman out of Louisiana. Nader Abdallah was a 2003 or 2005 class, somewhere in there. So it's been a while, and they don't even necessarily go into Louisiana all that often. Jair Brown, does that count as going into Louisiana? He was in Louisiana for a spell, but then, of course, he's no longer in Ohio State anyway, so I don't know that one really counts. We've talked about how on the show a couple days ago, Ohio State, they're fine with their defensive line numbers, according to Ryan Day. So why would they even want to crowd the room with another 5-star defensive tackle? But I'm never going to side on the side of Ohio State's definitely going to get this 5-star defensive lineman from the South. If I have an option A to say there's no chance, and an option B to say, hey, I like their chances, I'm going to generally side with option A on the 5-star defensive tackle out of the South.
Yeah, that's one of those position groups where a lot of the best players in the nation are in the South, so you have to go into the South, but it is a real uphill battle. Recruiting out of Louisiana in general is hard because there's a real draw to LSU for the in-state kids, but also Alabama's right there, Texas and A&M's right there. You got all those other schools right down there. And if you want to get out of the SEC, well, you've got Clemson, you got Florida State. Georgia's right there in terms of, being much closer to Louisiana than Ohio is. There's just a lot of other options. That's just a very tough area to pull guys out of, because Louisiana is, Georgia is a area, especially like the Atlanta area, where you get a lot of transplants, where, a lot of people who live in Atlanta are not from Atlanta. And, if you grew up in Ohio and then your family moved to Atlanta, or even your parents grew up in Ohio and moved to Atlanta, maybe you have more likelihood to have some affinity for Ohio State in particular. Like Garrett Wilson, for example, that was a Texas guy, but his family was from Ohio and then moved to Texas. And then he had this affinity for Ohio State and then comes back. That's not necessarily as true in Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama as it is in places like Georgia or Florida. So I think I am always going to bet against Ohio State pulling someone out of Louisiana. They tried with Tackett Curtis a year ago, and he ended up going to USC. Now he's back in the portal, so maybe they get him, potentially in the portal this year. That's at least a possibility. I would not bet on Dominick McKinley. If I'm going to bet on them landing a guy in the defensive line recruiting class for 2024 during the early signing period, which will already be done by the time you hear this, I would bet on Dominic Kirks rather than Dominick McKinley, but that's, neither one of those is a sure thing. Neither one of those is a definitely not, but I think they're more likely to end up with Kirks than McKinley. Next one from Buckeye 6731. Any idea how well Jeremiah Smith and Aaron Noland know each other? What do you think of the idea of these two rooming together, join them from the hip on day one? Aaron Noland from Georgia, Jeremiah Smith from South Florida. So they may know each other from camps and, all-star games and visits at Ohio State, but I don't, this is not, to Kyle McCord and Marvin Harrison, who played high school football together or anything like that. So, Tony, you know me, I am always up for a good, hey, did you know the quarterback and the wide receiver are roommates? Tony, did you know that Dwayne Haskins and Austin Mack are roommates? Did you have any idea? Have you heard anything about that?
Yep, I remember that. I wonder, Tom, if maybe Aaron Noland and Jeremiah Smith will be roommates in San Antonio when they're both playing in the All-American Bowl later in a couple of weeks. And maybe that's a question that Kevin Newman and Mark Givler can ask when they're down there. Say, hey, are you guys roommates yet? Who are you rooming with? And just get really nosy about all of these questions, like, what's your address? Why? Why do you want to know my address? And stuff like that. Some of those things, I like the big brother thing that the Ohio State does, but the rooming thing that they do as well. They've got such nice apartments now. These dorms, they're ridiculous. I think you can put 4 people in there legitimately, unlike when you'd put 4 in a place illegitimately back in the day, like in the towers, where there shouldn't be 16 people in here. There should only be like 4. No, it's fine. Just the beds go up to the walls. It's fine. There's enough room for everybody. But yeah, I'm all for getting those two to get acquainted with each other. And
we're going to have to add Mr. Business to the official logo and the description on this podcast at some point soon if he continues guest hosting. He's been on here more than Kevin.
Well, this is his first appearance in this show, Tom.
Well, I know, but we've gone 2 shows in a row. He's on quite a. Plus, he looks better in a bow tie than Kevin. More professional.
Yes, he does. There you go. Very, very much professional. But you want your quarterback to be rooming with these guys, and not just rooming, but on the field, on the practice field, after hours, get the key to the Woody, that sort of thing, where they're just always working. And I would expect that to continue with this. The way Ryan Day talks about Aaron Noland, saying that he is going to be the leader of this team. So I'm not going to doubt the guy that knows quarterbacks about his quarterback.
Well, and what's interesting is the way they do rooming. You talked about it a little bit with the big brothers and all that kind of stuff, but the way they do rooming during camp a lot of times is you'll have guys from the offensive side of the ball rooming with someone from the defensive side of the ball, or you'll have, maybe that's the case for bowls, where the whole point is you have people who don't just get to know the people in their room or on their side of the ball. The whole team gets to know each other. And then you end up with Cade Stover and Tommy Eichenberg and Steele Chambers, I think, were all roommates this year. And, I go back a couple of years and it was like a bunch of the tight ends, I think, lived together, but like tight ends and an offensive lineman and someone on the defensive side of the ball. Like the whole point is that you're trying to get, so you don't get cliquey on the team, that you get guys who are friends with people, all different position groups, different sides of the ball, all that kind of stuff. So, that it's sort of, they're sort of strategic in the way that they do that as well. So we'll see. We will, I'm sure at some point ask Aaron Noland, hey, who are you living with? Next up from @BuckyHustle6, will the NCAA go lighter on Michigan if Harbaugh leaves? So that's an interesting question. And, obviously that would mitigate the head coach penalties. I think you're likely to see, assuming that they feel that they've proven their case in the, initial notice of allegations that went out this week involving the COVID stuff. And then whenever the notice of allegations goes out for all the stuff that came out this fall with the Connor Stallions and the sign stealing and all of the associated other stuff, you are as a head coach looking at a probably pretty significant penalty for 2 separate major infractions cases going on simultaneously. That's, that's something that's going to come down probably fairly hard on the head coach. That's probably why you're hearing his name floated for, the San Diego Chargers job right now, sort of beat the posse out of town, basically. I don't know that's, I don't know that the NCAA is going to look at that and go, well, as long as Jim Harbaugh is gone, everything else is fine. I think you're still, whoever the new head coach is obviously isn't going to have the suspension like ported over to him. But I think you're still looking at if there are other coaches on the staff who get suspensions or show causes or whatever, or you've got scholarship restrictions. I don't think I buy the idea that this is like, well, if Jim Harbaugh, this is all a secret vendetta against Jim Harbaugh. Like, I don't think that's actually what's going on here. So I don't think it's going to materially impact, if there's a scholarship production number, I don't think that changes the scholarship production number if Jim Harbaugh is no longer the head coach.
Yeah, and especially if he just walks away, like there's no punishment given to him. But even if he was still there, the punishment would be your show cause, and that doesn't have anything to do with the scholarship reduction, the lack of institutional control. It's not a lack of head coach control. It's lack of institutional control. So there's still the whole administrative aspect of this that goes beyond the head coach. And, the scholarship reduction, the whatever vacated things that they're going to have, like that's all in addition to anything that would happen to Harbaugh. Think back to Ohio State when they essentially fired Jim Tressel, and did that go easier on, did the NCAA go easier on them for that? They still got docked the postseason, and I don't expect any postseason bans any longer. I think maybe the NCAA is hoping like the punishment should ban you from the postseason themselves, like that sort of thing. Like, we're not going to limit you, your eligibility for it, but hopefully these 20 scholarships that you no longer have will make you a 7-5 program rather than a 10-2 program, that sort of thing. Because I don't really see them trying to impact any type of television product anymore.
Yeah, this is all kind of new, where postseason bans have been. I mean, I'm trying to remember the last team that got a postseason ban. It's been a year or two at least, and it feels like there are sort of like gradual trends in the punishments are, and I'm not expecting 20 scholarship, a 20 scholarship reduction. Like I don't remember what the Penn State situation was. I don't think you're going to see quite that much. But I think you're going to probably see scholarship reductions. You're probably going to see some coaching penalties. Obviously I'm not expecting a TV ban. Like that's one of those things that I think that the only thing I can say with 100% confidence, they're not going to get a TV ban. That's just not a thing that they're going to issue against anyone anymore. Postseason penalties. Yeah. I mean, that might be just hit them hard enough in other areas that it sort of works itself out as a functional postseason ban without being a postseason ban. Yeah, it's so fascinating to me how different this conversation is compared to where it was when Jim Tressel was, when Jim Tressel was the guy in the NCAA's crosshairs and, accused of the same thing that Jim Harbaugh is, which is lying to the NCAA. And this is just the first thing for Jim Harbaugh. And the NCAA hasn't officially ruled that he did it yet, but it's in the notice of allegations. And, that was a thing that got Jim Tressel fired, got Ohio State a 1-year bowl ban. And, that's just, act one of this Michigan thing.
Well, and it's funny when I say postseason ban, I wasn't even thinking bowls. Like, I'm just thinking playoffs. So that may be where things are now in terms of what actually counts as the postseason. And to me, I guess playoffs is postseason, but as long as...
Well, you got to remember, the NCAA doesn't actually have oversight over the college football playoff. So they can't specifically say college football playoff ban. They would have to say postseason ban, which, this is one of the many areas in which the NCAA governance is like, what? Why? Who drew this up this way? And the answer is, well, no one. It just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah, and we know the committee says they're not going to hold anybody ineligible as long as they're eligible. So as long as the NCAA is saying they're eligible and conferences are saying they're eligible, they're going to be eligible. So, but that is all new, and it has been a while since we've seen any like big time postseason ban from anybody. And I guess I'll be surprised if I see it again. But this is also a very, very unique and serious charge.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's worth reiterating, the thing that OSU got hit for 12 years ago, that's Act 1 for Michigan. That's and also the stuff that OSU got hit for, the underlying charges that led to the Jim Tressel lied to the NCAA thing, all that stuff's legal now, which is crazy to think about. And so, we'll see where this all goes. We'll see where Jim Harbaugh goes. But no, I don't, I think this is only just beginning this process, and it's probably going to drag out for another year or more. Next one from Matt, Bucky Hustle 6. How many more players do you think enter the portal for Ohio State? I think we kind of had a rough list, and a lot of the names off of that list are gone. I think what may impact guys moving forward is who leaves, who comes back. If you're a guy at a position and you think, I've got a clear path to the playing field now, once these guys who I think are going to leave for the NFL, if those guys come back, maybe the path to the playing field isn't so clear. And then maybe you think about leaving. You may have sort of fall off effects from guys making NFL decisions that you weren't expecting them to make. So that's where I'd maybe expect it. So, and there are other guys who may end up deciding to go after the bowl game, but I don't think you're going to see another. How many guys have left now? 12 or something like that. I don't think you're going to see another wave of guys like that, but you may see another handful, 3, 4, something like that. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And, I still have on my list like 6 guys that, I'd put on my preliminary expected list. But some of those are, do I want to come back for my 6th year type of thing? Or do I want to go somewhere else for my 6th year type of thing? But also, we're going to see stuff after the spring as well. If somebody, say, on the offensive line, hitting their 3rd year, still has not moved past the 3rd team, they may hit the road and go find some place to play. Or somebody that is graduating in the spring, that sort of thing. Like, I'm just staying to get my degree, then I'll be hitting the road and I can go wherever I want, that sort of thing. Not that they couldn't anyways, but there is still some time frame issues going on here. I did expect when we had that flurry, when everybody was hitting, and I think I asked both you and Kevin at that point, like, give me, like, I set the over-under at like 2.5 more names, and I don't think we had any further names other than maybe Kyle McCord after that one, which was not necessarily the one that everybody was expecting. But yeah, I'm still 3, 4, something like that would not surprise me. Like I said, I still got like 6 names here, and I could pull off 2 to 4 more others, just depending on how spring goes. Because there are a bunch of guys that are entering their 3rd and 4th year who have not really played yet, and you've got 15 freshmen hitting spring ball, and if they, how quickly they move past or stay even with somebody, or for some guys it doesn't take long to see like, oh, that guy's better than I wasn't that good when I was that young, and I'm probably not that good right now, and so the writing is big bold letters for a lot of these guys come like April 15th.
Yeah, we have come to call that the spring awakening, where it's like you're driving in the middle lane and you've got people passing you on both sides, and it's like, this might not be the highway for me. That's sort of where the left lanes are passing only, by the way. That's a whole separate lecture. Anyway, transfer out of the left lane if you're driving slowly. Next one from at fun_magnets, Jeremiah Smith is an immediate starter, right?
Tom, hey boy. This is the question. We did not talk about this on the last show or the previous to the last show, but we did say other than Jeremiah Smith, who would be the first freshman to get a start, implying that we expect Jeremiah Smith to be the first freshman to get a start. One of the things that I was talking with Mark and Kevin about while on a live stream while you were on campus was that I wouldn't be surprised if Jeremiah Smith becomes the 4th true freshman with 30 receptions for a Buckeye, his freshman year. Mark said he would be surprised if he doesn't become that 4th guy. So, Tom, I'll go ahead and flip this to you. I don't think he is an immediate starter, but where do you stand on that part and also the 30 reception mark? But I also think he's an eventual starter or maybe a spot starter at some point. It's a lot to put on a guy.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to put on a guy that you're a day one starter. I'm not saying no.
Yeah.
And some of this may depend on stuff like, does Emeka Egbuka come back? Because if Emeka Egbuka comes back, one of the 3 starting positions is spoken for. And I think another one of the starting positions is spoken for with Carnell Tate. So, then you're going against all of the other very talented receivers in that receiver room for that 3rd starting spot. So, I think my expectation would be he's not a day one starter. If you're asking me to set the over-under on number of starts for Jeremiah Smith in 2024 and you're setting the over-under at 0.5, I'm probably taking the over. I'm almost certainly taking the over. But I don't know, someone's going to get hurt at some point. And I think he's certainly in the top 5 entering the season. Certainly. Maybe he's in the top 4. I don't think it's realistic to think he's in the top 3. Unless Emeka Egbuka leaves, and then then I'm bumping the over under on the number of starts and the projected first start date. I'm bumping that up quite a bit, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect him to start day one, just because you really haven't. I mean, have you ever seen that an Ohio State receiver starting day one, game one of his true freshman season? I'm just thinking back, like Chris Olave, no. Garrett Wilson, no. Jackson Smith-Njigba, no. David Boston, no.
Maybe Ted Ginn. I'm not sure about Chris Carter. Ted Ginn in 2004. Like, I can go and actually pull up that box score. So that might be something.
You can pull that one up while I'm thinking about the 30 catch thing. But I think if he's healthy, he's hitting the 30 catches next year would be my expectation. But there even that is. I think everyone's kind of going, well, of course he'd get 30 catches. Why wouldn't he get 30 catches? There's no scenario in which he doesn't get 30 catches if he's healthy. Julian Fleming had 26 catches this year. Carnell Tate, who everyone is looking at, is like, man, this is likely a more or less sure thing to start next year. Carnell Tate, 17 catches, 260 yards. So, you're looking for him to do double essentially what Carnell Tate did this year. I think he will. Marvin Harrison, 67 catches, Cade Stover, 41, Emeka Egbuka, 35 this year. Those are the only guys with 30 catches this year. So that's the kind of company we're talking about. And I do think he gets it this year, but some of that depends on, does Emeka Egbuka come back? Some of that depends on, does Cade Stover come back? But yeah, we try very hard to not overly gas up the true freshmen before anyone has actually seen them on the field at a college level in person, but it feels like, Tony, if someone was going to get to 30 catches as a true freshman receiver, Jeremiah Smith is probably the guy who you would think would do it.
Yeah, I'm not going to bet against that. And to answer my own question about Ted Ginn, he did not start any of the first 3 games in 2004. That's all the further I've gone and looked. Do you know, Tom, can you tell me the 2 starting receivers in 2004 to open the season against Cincinnati? Go.
Boy, 2 starting receivers to open the season against Cincinnati. Well, by the end of the year, it was Ted Ginn and Anthony Gonzalez, and 2004, was it Santonio Holmes? I'll tell you what. Those are the 3 guys I'm going to say started the Michigan game: Santonio Holmes, Ted Ginn, and Anthony Gonzalez. Did any of them start the first game of the 2004 season?
Yeah, Santonio Holmes did. He was joined by Roy Hall.
Okay.
Now,
yeah, I was. Roy Hall was what? Go
ahead. Yeah. So the second game of the season featured Bam Childress in the starting lineup.
The second spring game, yes, that's and Ted Ginn was an otherworldly talent, and that was not an Ohio State room that was as deep or as talented as this Ohio State room, not by a long shot. I mean, Santonio Holmes is Santonio Holmes. He wasn't like finished product Santonio Holmes at the start of the 2004 season, but, future Super Bowl MVP Santonio Holmes could play a little football. So, he's in that conversation, but, I don't think Bam Childress is getting a start in the 2024 Buckeyes. I don't think Roy Hall is getting a start for the 2024 Buckeyes. So, Ted Ginn, the bar is pretty high to be, in terms of athleticism, explosiveness, playmaking ability, all that kind of stuff for Ted Ginn. And he didn't start over those guys. So until we can find a true freshman who definitely started and, is in a relevant era, like Chris Carter, I'm sorry, the Earl Bruce teams are not a great analog for the Ryan Day teams at Ohio State. So unless there's someone I'm not thinking of who's done it more recently than that, I think I'm going to just sort of always default to no until I see someone make it happen.
Well, I am loading the first box score from the 1984 season very slowly, because this is probably a heavy PDF to see if Chris Carter was in the starting lineup.
A handwritten PDF, I would guess, too. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like everything is filled out and almost there, Tom. Now I just have to scroll and look to see if they put in the starting lineups. And boy, here we go. Let's see. Ohio State offense. Split ends, Jay Holland, Doug Smith, Chris Carter. So, no, so he did not start. He was the second split end to go in because, so there you go. He started day one at Ohio State.
All right, next one from @fun_magnets. Rank JT, Emeka, and Henderson in order of the most important to return. So this is an interesting question because these are three guys that I think we have both sort of heard are more likely to return than you might have thought at the beginning of the season. And boy, all three of them would be massive for Ohio State to get back. I think I'm going to put Treveyon Henderson at the top of that list just because if he doesn't come back, then you're looking at three running backs in that running back room, two of whom are freshmen. So I think that's probably my answer for the number one most important there. But I don't, I think this is actually a pretty close, even with that, I think this is a pretty close decision in terms of, the impact that the other two guys could have on this team as well.
I'm with you because you have to look at the rest of the room as well. And that's why I think my ranking goes Henderson, Emeka, JT Tuimoloau, which is strange. Like the wide receiver room is deep. The running backs are a dime a dozen. JT Tuimoloau is a difference maker, so why would he be last? And it's like, well, there are other defensive ends, and when you're already losing, assuming Marvin Harrison and Julian Fleming and Xavier Johnson, you want somebody back in that receiver room. So having Emeka back would be huge, and they can build around him and move around him and decide different ways to use him and use him as a focal point of the offense as well. And I'm with you. You don't want to go into a season with three running backs. And so, because if you do, you've got to go to the portal. And now you're looking for a starter. Now you're looking for a Trey Sermon. And doing that in the portal age is kind of dangerous because you may be losing somebody. So now you need two running backs out of the portal. And there aren't two good running backs in the portal that are going to both come and join you. So I think overall, just for the smoothness of the season, I'm going to go Henderson 1, Egbuka 2, and Tuimoloau 3, which seems counterintuitive.
It does seem counterintuitive. And I think I think it's also worth noting that I think number one is pretty clear cut to me just because of the depth in the room. 2 and 3, I think you could make a pretty compelling argument either way. And I think it would be huge to get any or all of those guys back. And if they do get all three of those guys back, boy, that changes, I think, a lot of the conversation around this team. And you're going to have a new quarterback. And so having a returning wide receiver, a proven wide receiver who has been really, really good when he's been healthy, that's going to really, that takes a lot of the pressure off of Carnell Tate, who hasn't had to start yet, and Jeremiah Smith, who hasn't stepped foot on campus yet. And, the whole rest of that wide receiver room, I think there's some very, very talented receivers in that room, but they're all young and unproven. And having, a veteran coming back, I think makes a big, big difference in that room. So I think I will co-sign your answer there, but it is, this is not a, 1 huge gap, 2 huge gap, 3 kind of situation. They are all very important. I think The only thing that's a clear decision to me is number one, and that's Henderson, and that's just based on the rest of the depth chart. Last one, Tony. Should Lincoln Kienholz get any meaningful snaps in the Cotton Bowl? If the coaching staff thinks he's ready, absolutely he should get meaningful snaps in the Cotton Bowl. We'll see if the coaching staff thinks he's ready, because again, this is a guy who showed up in the summer, who played just a little bit during the course of the year. It sounds like they've been happy with how the quarterbacks have looked during bowl prep, and so that's all good. If I'm Ryan Day, I think I'm giving Lincoln Kienholz a drive at some point just to, get more reps on film, get him more experience. Because, yeah, it matters if you win this game, but does it really matter if you win this game? Is that the primary goal here? Is the ultimate goal here to win the 2023 Cotton Bowl and to bring the 2023 Cotton Bowl trophy back to Columbus? I submit that it is not. I would submit that the ultimate goal for this game should be to get Ohio State in the best possible position to win as many football games in 2024 as they possibly can. I know they want to win the 2023 Cotton Bowl. I know they've got, potentially a lot of guys coming back who want to end the season right, and it changes the narrative around the team a little bit, not entirely, but a little bit if you win this game. But the ultimate goal is to make yourself as good as you can heading into spring ball, heading into winter workouts, all that kind of stuff. So if they feel that Lincoln Kienholz is ready to step on that kind of a stage, because he's so far only played, last 5 minutes against Michigan State kind of situations. If they feel he's ready to step on that stage, absolutely give him a shot. Just like treat it like the first game against Indiana, the second game against Youngstown State. You wanted to win those games too, but also you wanted to figure out who your quarterback is. I think the process of figuring out who your 2024 quarterback is has already started this month.
Yeah, and we've talked about this all month long, that he should play some in the Cotton Bowl. But Ryan Day on signing day said this is Devin Brown's game, and when asked if Lincoln Kienholz was going to play, he's like, well, if there's an opportunity, meaning if it's a 42-14 game in the fourth quarter is how I kind of took that. So I think you should play him. Like you said, give him a drive, see what happens. And not just see what happens, give him a drive so he has a drive. It's like, oh, let's just see what happens. Like, no, this is an opportunity where it's not going to impact really anything, because it's not like you're trying to get all of these guys to come back for this game. You're trying to get all of these guys to come back for next year. So there is focus on next year already happening this year. So I think it's okay to carry that into the Cotton Bowl. At this point, based on what Day said on Wednesday, I guess I'll be surprised that if Kienholz actually gets much time, unless it's a blowout one way or the other, which would maybe also surprise me equally.
Yeah, I'm not expecting this to be a huge blowout one way or the other. And, I heard him say that, and I thought, I think that maybe tells me where they think Kienholz is in terms of preparedness right now, because I think they also recognize that this is a little bit of a forward-looking game to a certain degree. But how much of this is also personnel management, where if Devin Brown comes out and looks just okay, and Lincoln Kienholz comes out and has two great drives, well, how does that change the conversation around the quarterback position and the likelihood that you have fewer than two of those guys when the season starts next year? There's that kind of factor as well. So there are factors in here, in terms of what have they looked like during practice this month that we don't have direct access to. So I'm sure that that's going to be one of the driving factors in this decision. But, all things being equal, if Lincoln Kienholz looks even remotely ready, I would like to see him get some reps, because he should be getting reps. Jelani Thurman should be getting some reps. Like, you should be taking advantage of the opportunity to play some of your younger guys, and let's see what it looks like. Malik Hartford should be getting reps in this game. Like, let's see what you've got there and start to build for next year, get some film on these guys, all that kind of stuff.
Yep, I'm with you. That will do it for today. Please go ahead and like this video if you're watching it on YouTube. If you're listening to it on a podcast platform, go ahead and rate and review 5 stars if you could. We would appreciate that. And as always, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you're not yet a member, now is a fantastic time to join. check us out there at the Huddle message board. All kinds of insight, info, X's and O's, and sometimes some gossip, all things like that. So feel free to find us there. So thank you all for tuning in. Have a wonderful holidays. We will talk to you guys, I don't know, the 26th, I suppose, of December, if not sooner. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.